Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Kyung-Sik Choi. I'm a professor of the practice and the director of cybercrime investigation and cybersecurity program at Boston University. Yeah, thank you for inviting me here. It's awesome. So yeah, let me start with kind of the kind of my belief here, and I'm a strong believer in a kind of simple equation. So student success kind of equals to my success. Dot on left, and it is very true. Yeah, this simple equation may be solved by kind of multiple ways though. So many students kind of expect us to guide them to for kind of getting their feet wet in the field of cybercrime and the cybersecurity, and ask us to open the door to success. Unfortunately, many of us don't know about the shape of the door and its color in this field because it's kind of fairly new to us, and at the same time, kind of the field is incredibly broad. I've been struggle with this challenge for many years in the past, and I'm still questioning myself, like how much I need to learn more and effectively kind of teach in this field as a professor, scholar, and practitioner. Science fiction writer William Gibson said, "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed." Perhaps meaning to us, it is kind of important to explore all kind of current and new technology to kind of gain better understanding of nature of cybercrime issues, and so that we can scientifically predicting cybercrime phenomena. So people tend to call us cybercrime scholar or kind of sometimes kind of cybersecurity expert, but I personally prefer to be called as a cybercriminologist. Cybercriminology is the interdisciplinary study of the causes of cybercrime, which combines knowledge from cybercriminology, criminology, absolutely right, and that's important, psychology, sociology, political science, computer science, cybersecurity, you name it, to deliver in-depth understanding of nature of cybercrime within criminal justice field. I think within the criminal justice field is our color of the door to success. To become cybercriminologists, proper technical training is essentially needed. Cybercrime requires fresh response from law enforcement officers trained in both cybercriminal behavior and information technologies. However, such training is not yet commonplace in the global community. Although many institutions are focusing on cybersecurity issues, very few programs offer interdisciplinary approach combining criminal justice, digital forensic, and cybercrime investigation, which is, I think, crucial to prevent, investigate, and respond cyber and high-tech crimes. Effective training curriculum should place technical investigation alongside the examination of its causes. After many years of trials and errors, I think now I can show students the door to success in this field with a little bit of confidence. In every class, I encourage students to explore kind of cutting edge approaches to cybercrime investigation techniques, cybercriminology, and the ethics of cybercrime investigation. More importantly, I encourage students to think outside of the box and think globally and act both locally and globally while studying cybercriminologies. Because, they are in kind of the nation, right? They have to understand inside and, of course, outside. Cybercrime is not just one nation's problem, everybody's problem. So I officially established Center for CIC in 2018 with my close cyber colleagues and international partners. The Center for CIC, for those who are not familiar, is a nonprofit Boston University affiliated cybercrime research organization that pursues kind of research and professional activities in the field of cybercriminology. The Center for CIC is a relatively young yet fast growing organization. We have approximately 50 active CIC board members who represent on behalf of 15 nations. They are professors, researchers, and practitioners who have been working extensively within the field of cybercrime and cybersecurity. The Center for CIC has been a tremendous force in reaching out to global law enforcement agencies and cultivating international collaboration and response to cybercrimes. My greatest accomplishment will be hosting the 2021 International WIDEC Conference this June 1st and 2nd. Boston University and Center for CIC will be hosting the conference in Boston, fully sponsored by DOJ, kind of Bureau of Justice Assistance. The goal of this federally funded project is to provide students and law enforcement officers with the necessary components to instill a solid skill set as well as fundamental effort that also kind of serves as a facilitator to enhance the level of capable guardianship in future law enforcement. Hosting wider conference can assist us with kind of meeting these goals and further kind of promote the development and implementation of internship and co-op program. This year's wider conference theme is the future of the cybercrime and its challenges, innovative solution against the cybercrime. This year's conference aims to discuss important drivers and disruptors of challenge in cybercrime and address the importance of technology-related issues in this area. In particular, the global challenges related to developing effective criminal justice policies and preventive measures against cybercrime. So let me quickly kind of show you the website. It's pretty cool. Okay, I have to bring it here. So if you don't mind, let me play kind of 1 minute kind of, the advertisement video. It's pretty cool, right? And it's a free, so please kind of join us. Then I think there is sponsoring, BZA. Awesome. So yeah, I will kind of navigate a little bit. And so if you click kind of competition here, so it's incredibly awesome. And you see kind of the 16 international team doing cybercrime investigation competition. It's not hacking. Don't get confused with the hacking competition like, CTF challenge. So we are not doing this. And because we are literally, again, do you remember, within the criminal justice, right? And so it's a law enforcement kind of oriented. And of course, like, the white hat kind of good guys, cybersecurity expert going to join, but I mean, they mostly kind of, they're working in the field of criminal justice. For example, since I'm in charge, I will show you kind of my team here, the BU team. So this is a quick video.
Hi, my name is Tim Laham. I'm a student at Boston University Cybercrime Investigation and Cybersecurity Graduate Certificate Program, and I'm also a digital forensic examiner with the Boston Police Department.
Hi, my name is Seth Hausman. I'm a detective employed by the Boston Police Department. I work in the Crimes Against Children unit, assigned to Internet Crimes Against Children.
Hi, my name is Michael Sullivan. I'm a graduate of the Boston University Cyber Crime Investigation and Cybersecurity Graduate Certificate Program. I'm also employed by the Boston Police Department as a sergeant, and I'm assigned to the Crimes Against Children unit, where I oversee the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force.
We all look forward to participating in the White Hat Cybercrime Investigation Competition. Thank you.
So as you can see, it is different, right? And it's not like, the hackers. We have a Black Hat conference in Las Vegas, like every August, like people joining, and that's like 30,000 people, like hackers all over the world kind of joining that. But we kind of, as a white hat, and so we invite kind of government officers and also, the students, right? And so gonna be kind of good guys, definitely kind of to defend kind of our security and all of it. So yeah, it's a kind of incredibly great. And so 16 kind of teams, and also great award. You can see 1,000 cash prize plus kind of $3,000 scholarship. So then also we have a student paper competition going on. So I think this week is the due. So we already accepted kind of 15 abstract. So they supposed to kind of submit final paper by end of this week. So yeah, grand prizes, and so they also, the winner is going to present their findings at the second day of White Hat Conference. As you can see, yeah, we also have a great program kind of day one. So lots of kind of renowned speakers, and you know, the keynote speech kind of will be done by Sean Donnelly, and he's doing lots of kind of the cyber training for the government. So he named kind of, you know, Forbes magazine's prestigious 30 under 30. He's only 28 years old. So it's he's a keynote speech. Then we invited kind of BJ director, and as you can see, Interpol coming and Europol coming. Then we're gonna have invite kind of either kind of Microsoft, IBM, or kind of GE person. And also we have a great speaker from Science Institute, and you may know that's famous, right? And the high training facility, the high quality training for cybersecurity. Then also, yeah, I'm presenting too, and introduce kind of my virtual reality simulation for law enforcement training. Then also wonderful kind of, you know, the law enforcement platform. And so we actually kind of developing kind of new network platform for the EU. So the Salvador from Spain and Mike Toro from Colombia gonna present that one. So yeah, it's a lot of kind of great things happening here. As you can see on the right side, session moderator, discussion, they are all our DC members. It's a incredibly kind of great people, right? And also day two, the highlight of the day two is kind of mock trial. So all 16 kind of international team will compete 24 hours on May 31st and June 1st. So which is the kind of first day of the White Hat Conference, right? And so technically 16 teams will compete 2 days, including the first day of the White Hat Conference, while the second day will host the top 3 winning teams competition through cybercrime mock trial. This is very unique, right? And so average kind of hacking competition, yeah, they don't care about the legal side, but we do care about legal perspective. So we have international judges, legal judges. They've been doing kind of, you know, incredible job in the cybercrime trials. So one from France, and one from Switzerland, and one from the US. Then also Jennifer, our DC member, she has a incredible kind of expertise in the mock trial, and so she's going to coordinate this trial. Then afternoon session, you can see student paper competition going on. Also great thing, right? And the job fair. So I kind of start inviting kind of federal agencies, and so that they can join, and hopefully they can recruit, right? And the students. And so it's a kind of wonderful things happening, you know, throughout White Hat Conference. So I'd like to especially kind of thank DC members who actively participate in this special event, and hope to make kind of White Hat Conference a grand success with all of your cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. And again, we'll allow Q&A at the end for all of our speakers, including Dr. Choi. But now I'd like to extend it, the next session, to Dr. Tom Holt from Michigan State. Dr. Holt.
Hi, everybody. So when I heard we were going to be talking about success, it's kind of tricky, because when you talk about success, success means something different to everybody. So that could mean you want to be a very good instructor. It could mean you want to be a great researcher. It could be any number of things. So what I'm going to talk about today kind of goes to this question of how do you get there, regardless of what you want to do and how you are defining success. I would say one of the first key things that you have to do is set out a clear set of goals, something that you can reasonably achieve, and do so in ways that break down into simple kind of bite-sized elements. So kind of in the grant world, you might call them objectives to achieve the goals. And there's a lot of different ways to think about it, but ideally having it break out into objectives that you can achieve in short amounts of time is very helpful. That way you're not making an unrealistic expectation like, I want to write a book this summer. Very few people can do that. Instead, can I write a chapter in a month? Can I write 2 chapters by the end of the summer? Can I get to 3? That way you're at least setting objectives that make sense and goals that are achievable. Broadly speaking, in terms of being successful and understanding how to get there, a good thing to understand is that, one, you're going to fail. And that's kind of by definition how this field works. Papers get rejected, grant proposals aren't funded, ideas don't always pan out like you'd like, even if you get the data together. Sometimes an analysis just doesn't lead to the results that you were expecting or that are necessarily going to be of relevance. So it's important that you get yourself right with the idea that there are always going to be stumbling blocks. And how do you respond to those and move past them in a way that doesn't hamstring your success? So if you realize when you get an R&R that you need a week to sort of step away from the comments, that's a good thing to learn about yourself. Try to get familiar with the way in which you deal with difficult comments or challenges. That way, when the situation arises, you're better prepared and equipped to know how long it's going to take for you to work through a specific set of issues or problems. And failure doesn't mean it's total or complete. In our field, just because a paper gets rejected from one outlet doesn't mean it's gone forever. Instead, it's okay, move on to the next one. And getting familiar with the best outlets for your work is also extremely helpful. If you've gone through that cycle before, depending on where you are in your career stage, you may have cycled through a couple of top outlets and it's taken 6 months or a year, depending on how many places you've gone to. And the more that you can get effective at identifying, here's the best set of potential outlets for where my work will go. Let's say your goal in terms of success is to publish in Criminology or JQ or some other outlet. Figuring out the best kinds of data and the methods and the theories that are going to get you there is really important. Broadly speaking, if you're thinking about being successful at publishing, one of the things that I would highly encourage you to think through is always having a good theoretical aim for your piece. Just because no one's published a paper on a specific topic does not mean that it's a slam dunk. It may mean that it's not necessarily of interest or that there are no necessary value adds by just taking it on its own as an abstract concept. So I encourage you to think really heartily about how you can bring in a theoretical tie, how you can test an idea in a way that's going to link to the broader discipline. That's always instrumental in terms of being successful at publishing, particularly in some of the higher outlets. And in addition, I would say one of the keys to success is in thinking about persistence. And by persistence, I mean that idea of failure, that you're not always going to succeed at the first thing that you do. So being able to stay at it and keep going. And no matter how many times something gets turned down, you have to pick yourself up and think through, how do you edit this piece or what do you do with it? Along with that, one of the important things that you need to learn is how to take that constructive criticism that you may get from a reviewer, whether that's at a journal or a publisher or at a grant agency or what have you, and taking that information and then crafting it into something useful from there. Grants are really one of the toughest areas in my mind for success, largely because it's a black box. Having been on both sides as a grant submitter, as a grant getter, and as a grant reviewer, you can put together a very strong team and you can have a very sound idea that fits into the idea in the RFP. But the reviewers who get those materials may have 10 other really good proposals to sort through. And that's the challenge. Unlike with a journal where you've got a set of reviews and you can see crystal clear exactly what was said, and you can kind of intuit a little bit, grant proposals are a little bit different in that you get a summary of comments, and it's not necessarily clear why what looks like from the reviews this was like an A- or an A, why it didn't get funded. And that's the trickiest part of all, is taking the amount of time that you invest in a grant proposal and then moving on from there. I would encourage you, if you are thinking about trying to be successful at grantsmanship, trying to find ways to partner with those who are successful in getting grants to begin with, and try to partner with them. If you can have someone, particularly if you're at a junior stage in your career, if you can partner with someone who is good at getting grants and you can find a way to submit something together, it's a good opportunity to learn the ropes, get a handle on how to communicate, because grants in particular are very different from academic writing in that they have very specific terms that they expect to see and frameworks of development and real ties into specific deliverables. So what we might think of as being useful in terms of academic publishing is not going to be the same set of valued ideas when we're talking about, like, say, NIJ or BJA, where they're looking at deliverables that are going to be actionable for law enforcement or for policymakers. And so you have to orient yourself a little bit differently to how do you take your research and translate it into valuable information for those in the field. The academic journals are important, but it's not necessarily the thing that they're going to place the greatest emphasis on. Lastly, I haven't really talked about teaching, but teaching is one of those things that can be especially difficult if you're thinking about teaching cybercrime or related content, because you'll have CJ students who maybe are not that technologically savvy. They know how to use their phone, they know how to use their computer, but when you start talking about programming languages, or you get into some of the nuts and bolts of how malicious software works, even at a sort of top level, you may get some students sort of fading out in terms of interest. So you have to find ways to really pitch down the middle and bring those students in a way that helps them understand the concepts, but in an approachable fashion. And that is kind of challenging. With teaching cybercrime in particular, I would recommend finding the hooks that are going to make the most sense to you, and then trying to pull that in with regard to student interests. It's tricky. It takes a fair bit of practice. And again, being persistent is important. I'm sure your student reviews at the end of an academic year, if you've gotten them, sometimes are not necessarily as constructive as you'd hope. You may understand that students haven't read the books that you've assigned, or maybe they read one article, but not all the content. And so asking those students who you know have tried to stay on top of things, did these books work? Was this helpful? That can be more meaningful feedback than just what you get on those blankets. We call them SIRs at MSU, those sort of student information forms. And try not to take some of those criticisms seriously. Sometimes students will kind of insert personal attacks, which you don't always appreciate. I've had people say that they think I'm an awful dresser, which has nothing to do with my teaching, but that happens from time to time. So again, it kind of goes to this issue where try not to take some feedback too close to heart, because sometimes it's not always going to be helpful. I think I'm at 10 minutes, so I'll open it up for someone else to talk, but that at least kind of gives you my baseline thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Holt. And for the record, I always think you dress very nicely. So you just tell them that I think sometimes they just don't, they just want something to say. And obviously that's not right. So I'm very pleased to introduce our next presenter, Dr. Lee from UMass Lowell.
Hello, everyone. I'm Claire Lee, who is an assistant professor at the School of Criminal and Justice Studies at UMass Lowell. I'm going to share my screen with the slides. Let me see how it works. So you will see the screen, right? So thank you, Kathy, to make me be here. Thank you all for coming here this morning. I'm the most junior person here at the panel, so I'm very privileged. At the same time, I'm a bit nervous. What should I talk and what should I think or give you some ideas of like success and or failure. In my opinion, like ways of achieving success in the cyber world or academia have at least teaching, research, grant component. I can talk about like a little bit of like what I think about like failure, how you can get through it. And then I will focus a little bit of one of my recent grants with the collaboration and open up the floor. I really echoed with other speakers, Dr. Choi and Dr. Hort, about like success and failure and all that. I feel like what is more important for me and is that you always should be prepared to be failed. Like you always should be prepared to get rejected or get accepted or whatever. And sometimes it's like the feeling detachment helpful. When I was a grad student, I couldn't really figure out how could people really do that. Like I would cry, like even if I get a rejection or R&R. But now I'm at the stage, I don't necessarily attach my feeling towards that kind of decision so much. And another thing that I want to mention is that it's better to have a lot of things in your pipeline, get things in a pipeline, whether like it's under review, under revision, or writing, or data collection, and all that. So that could be helpful if you get rejected one thing, if you get accepted another thing, and keep you moving forward. Two things that I would like to share is that I find a writing club is quite useful. I had that in my university at the current job. Due to COVID, we don't hold any at this moment, but like I assume that we will hold another writing club with my assistant professor's colleague. So we read our work each other and give some feedback and give some, areas to grow or fix and all that. So that was very helpful. So yeah, I just want to give you an overview of my research. I do research on human and social aspects of cybercrime and cybersecurity, work on online identity theft, online hate speech, and using big data and social media, and working on cybersecurity issues and cyber terrorism, cyber attacks, and also working on cybersecurity awareness and preparedness and cyber ethics. One last thing that I want to mention here is that I recently involved in K-12 cybersecurity education through different set of colleagues. So we at UMass Rural, we got the grant called Gen Cyber recently. It's the NSF grant. It's about the inspiring the next generation of cyber stars. Sounds very cool. So the story, just in case you don't, you may not heard of this before, the idea of Gen Cyber started in 2014 with 8 prior camps. And within 6 years, it grew so much and it opened in like 46 places in the United States or around the area. And it is, the idea of having this is to address the United States shortfall of skilled cybersecurity professionals and also teach K-12 teachers and students about cybersecurity and perhaps cybercrime as well. So the goal of Gen Cyber is to increase awareness of K-12 cybersecurity content and give more opportunity in the area. Second, it also increasing the student diversity in cybersecurity college and career pathways at the K-12 level and moving forward. Lastly, it facilitates teacher readiness with the teacher running community to learn, develop, and discuss K-12 material for cybersecurity. So we are very pleased to say that we are the first one in Massachusetts to get this. We were very surprised to find out that we don't have any camps in Massachusetts. I'm going to show you the map later. You will see a lot of camps are located in different parts of the world. the key thing that we got this one perhaps is because the collaboration between computer science and criminal justice. So I'm the only CJ person here. The rest of our team members are computer science professors. The UMass Rural is designated by NSA and DHS. It's a National Center for Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense Research. We also have the iSafer Center as well. So we are gonna host a Zen Cyber Camp July this year, virtually due to COVID. And we will recruit some students in the area of New England who are interested in this and who want to be the next generation of cyber stars. As you can see, these all other states in the US have the camp at this moment or previous year. I'm going to collaborate with other computer science professor in our university, and we will recruit high school students who are interested in this manner and try to teach them about basic idea of cybersecurity and some techniques or mitigating technique for cybercrime and computer ethics and some other things. By doing so, we are using our cyber range. We have a in-person cyber range at UMass Rural with 20 workstation and conference room and lecture theater. But due to COVID, we use this for remote learning platform as well, so everybody gets there, like VMware, virtual machine, and so on. So for the students who will attend our camp, they will also get this setting as well. So thank you very much for coming and listening to me, and hope you have a good end of semester. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, very much. And last but not least, I'm very, very glad to introduce Dr. Cross from Queensland University of Technology. And Dr. Cross, thank you very much.
Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon or good evening, depending on which part of the world you're in. It's a great pleasure to be here. I just want to thank Kathy for the opportunity to come and speak about this. I was certainly a little bit anxious about talking about success and what that means, but I'll have a go and hopefully it will be useful. Firstly, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land in which I live and work. So I acknowledge the Turrbal and Yagara people here in Brisbane. I acknowledge their leaders past, present, and acknowledge that these places have always been places of learning and teaching. I also want to thank Professor Tom Holt for essentially taking every point that I was going to speak about. So great minds think alike, Tom. And I do want to pick up on some of those points though. So I do think this idea of success, it's vague and it's abstract and it means different things to different people. And I think success can be a really privileged concept as well. And it's one that we need to think about in terms of, I guess, what it is that we personally want to achieve. What do we think success is for us as individuals? How does that fit in with the context of our circumstances? Whether we have ongoing employment, whether we are in kind of precarious positions, whether we have family support, whether we have collegial support, all of those things. So I do think that in looking at success, I agree with what Claire and Tom have both talked about in terms of the need to look at failure as well. So I think they're kind of this concept that you need to consider kind of in tandem with each other. So if you look at my track record, for example, I've got a number of publications. I've co-authored a monograph with Professor Mark Button over in Portsmouth. I've been very fortunate to receive a number of grants. I'm currently on a research fellowship, which has enabled me to focus on a particular research project for 2 years. But having said that, on the flip side, there's the fellowships I applied for that I didn't get. There was a research fellowship here, an early career one that we have in Australia. And I spent over 6 months crafting that application. I waited 12 months for the outcome, and it was a complete rejection. So that kind of, that was devastating. There was a fellowship that I applied for at QUT, and it was in my faculty and kind of in my area, and I didn't even get shortlisted. There's been rejections of articles. I mean, reviewers can be brutal, reviewers can be cruel, students can be cruel as well. I think we've all experienced that in some ways. So I think we need to, in terms of thinking about success, one of the key, I guess, lessons that I've learned, or that I've tried to learn, is around perseverance. And it's around being able to, I think, as Tom previously said, be able to grow a thick skin as such to separate kind of the professional from the personal. And that can be really difficult, particularly when some of the comments and feedback can be deeply personal and can feel like an attack. It's important to be able to realize that we are not defined by our work. We are not defined as academics by our number of publications, by our number of citations, by the grants that we receive. I think we need to talk more constructively and perhaps more openly in academia just about this notion of rejection and around the fact that good projects don't get funded, good articles don't get published. And on the flip side, sometimes we probably read articles that have been published in some of the top journals and kind of question how that happened and feel that yeah, why didn't mine get up? So I think we just need to put it into context. And I think some of the lessons that I've also learned is just around finding your people. I think one of the most joyful things in my research and in my academic life is finding people who will support me, finding people that I can support as well, knowing that you've got a group of people, whether they're colleagues at your university, whether they're within your kind of national or international networks, finding your people and finding those who have got your back and who will give you honest and constructive criticism on things. Similar to Claire, I've been involved in a writing group at QUT ever since I started back in 2012 and even kind of before that. So there's 5 of us and we meet on a fortnightly basis, and each fortnight someone offers up a piece of work in whatever state of being it may be in, and we each read it and we each offer kind of ideas and insights, and it's not a group that has similar interests. We're all kind of law and justice, but we all have very different backgrounds. We have different kind of research topics, and it can be really beneficial to have outsiders read your work and see what makes sense to them, what doesn't make sense. Sometimes I think we get really caught up in the details of our work and we feel it's really important and why don't people understand it? And I think it's really refreshing sometimes to have other people give that perspective, but you've got to be open to it and you've got to receive it with the grace in which it's intended. I think one of the other, factors that has been relevant to my journey has been kind of the ability to say yes to opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily have considered. So I didn't plan to have an academic career. It kind of wasn't my career path originally. I came from Queensland Police. I was a civilian working as a research and policy officer for 5.5 years, and the academic position kind of just presented itself. I applied and here I am 8 years later. But I think it's having an open mind to opportunities, not just with jobs and with employment, but also with research and with collaborators. I think it's important to realize that we can't control things. As academics, there's very little that we can control. We can't control the rejections or the acceptances of our articles or of our grants or how our work is accepted. We can really only control, I guess, the quality of work we put out. And if that's something that we're proud of, that we're happy with, then I think sometimes that needs to be enough. I think it's around people, it's around patience, it's around perseverance, and I think it is also around privilege. So I have been very lucky where I am to have had great mentors, both here at QUT and other people overseas. I've deliberately sought some of them out. Others has been a little bit more fortuitous and kind of just taking up opportunities that presented themselves. And I think as academics, we need to be kind to each other. Kindness doesn't really cost anything, but it can be so impactful. So I was recently promoted to associate professor at the end of last year. And for me now, I was kind of always told at the beginning that I needed a professor to be successful. I needed someone to kind of be on my grants, have professor on my grants, and I needed an Australian professor on my grants. And there isn't really anyone kind of in my area here in Australia doing it. So I just decided that I was going to become the professor and then put myself on other people's grants so they don't kind of suffer those same opportunities. I think back to one of my first articles that I ever submitted as an academic, and it was around online fraud. And for those of you that are familiar with my work, that's the main focus of most of what I've done. And it was rejected, and the review said online fraud wasn't a problem, that it just wasn't an issue and it didn't warrant any academic examination. So imagine what my life would be if I'd taken that to heart, if I'd kind of acted on that. Then I would never have pursued my passion. I would never have pursued the work that I feel is valuable and worthwhile. And online fraud is a problem. I think all of us in this seminar would certainly attest to the fact that not just online fraud, but cybercrime in general is just escalating. And it's even more so an issue now than it was when I submitted that journal article. So I think it's also around timing. I think sometimes it's just not the right time for a project. It's not the right time for an idea or for an article. And sometimes it's just about having, again, the patience to maybe put something on the back burner and wait for a new opportunity to present itself if something doesn't work out. I think we are all fortunate that cyber kind of is political at the moment, that it does have interest. It's kind of what I term like it's a politically attractive topic. So I think it's important the way we frame our ideas. I think as academics, sometimes it can be very easy to just want to do something because we feel it's the most important thing ever in the world and everyone else should care about it. And sometimes I think we need to step back and think about how we frame our ideas, how we frame our translation of research. I think it's really important for us in terms of success, not just to speak to our academic peers. I'm very supportive of trying to disseminate my research to non-academic audiences. And I do that through community talks. I do that through a number of different kind of non-academic publications. And I feel that that's important. And I feel that interaction, that engagement kind of makes me a better person, makes me a better researcher, and gives me greater insights into the research that I do and the topics that I do pursue. So I think we sometimes need to look outside of academia. We need to move outside of our comfort zones at times. But I think we just need to realize that success isn't necessarily the same for everybody. Looking at all panel members, we've all experienced and achieved success in different ways. And I'd hate for someone here to kind of feel that they haven't succeeded because they haven't achieved a particular thing that one of us has achieved, but have achieved something else. So I think it's dangerous to compare ourselves, even though that's kind of what we do as academics with metrics, etc. We kind of put in this competitive mindset to try and, I don't know, tear each other down. But I'd like to think that we should be supporting each other. It's more about collegiality. It's more about sharing in the successes of your peers and of those around you. And I think that makes for a stronger area. I think it makes for a stronger society and a stronger group of academics. So I might leave that there and open it up for some questions.
Well said, Dr. Cross. Thank you very much. So I'd like to encourage now everyone to ask questions, especially if you want to put them in the chat box or speak out. We would love to have them. If you do want to speak, please raise your electronic hand. That way I can see you. I do have 2 questions in the chat box that I'm going to go ahead and start with. And this is for all the panelists. So cyber-related research is becoming more accepted within the broader field of criminal justice and criminology, but I still get a lot of pushback from some journals, reviewers, etc. Any experience or advice to this? And how do we gain that respect from the broader field? So would any panelists like to address?
Can I start first?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. You say that here you get pushback from other discipline, but to me, like I submitted kind of criminology journal, I get pushback, and so the comments I received that's too much kind of technical. It's much more like cybersecurity paper, so you should submit it to cybersecurity paper. So I got pushback. So what I normally do when I work on technical portion, especially submitting to kind of cybersecurity side, definitely kind of work with the field expert in that area, so that because the format is totally different, right? And so computer science journals are, totally different than kind of criminology journal, what they're looking for, even the credential they're looking for, and a lot of things kind of get involved. And so I highly recommend, if you kind of aiming different types of journal, especially kind of technical side, absolutely kind of work with the expert. And also, I know I've been working kind of solo sometimes, but most of the time nowadays, because it's interdisciplinary, right? And so you have to work with different discipline experts so that you can be kind of succeeded in any type of journal. So the grant, I think that's the same way. Dr. Holtz kind of mentioned that. So you really have to kind of work with that field, and also lots of grant requirements literally kind of indicates. So you have to work with kind of, at least kind of minimum two, but normally kind of 3-4 different disciplines. So it's a very, very clear there. So yeah, that's why you have to kind of open your mind, right? And it's not just kind of one discipline can be succeeded in cybercrime. So got to work with others. Yeah, that's my 10 cents, 2 cents.
I would suggest when you're thinking about submitting to outlets, look in advance at what's been published there before, so that way you know before you submit the extent to which they're amenable to publishing about cybercrime. That way you're not going to somewhere that's just immediately going to say no. Additionally, to the extent that you can make that strong theoretical tie, that's really one of the most important things that you can do. That way you can immediately link it back to the broader disciplines focus around traditional offline offending, and you can either identify parallels or points of differentiation. It gives you some opportunity to note how your work fits into the broader field and then translate it as such as is needed. The other issue I would say that might be important to think about is the sample that you have and the way in which you're developing it. So if it's a multinational sample with thousands and thousands of respondents, that's going to increase the likelihood of acceptance at some of the top outlets in the field. If it's a college sample, those are a little harder to make work, particularly if it's a few hundred students. Those are really not what you see at a lot of the main outlets like Criminology or Justice Quarterly. So that's an important way to kind of think through in advance how you minimize the likelihood of rejection in some cases.
Thank you. And there's another question in the box that Dr. Cross has already answered, and I thank you very much. And I'm going to pose it to the other panelists too. Dr. Albanese asked, it appears to become quite important in the cyber world to include principals and research proposals with multidisciplinary backgrounds. How do you develop these professional networks? And he says he's asking for a friend. So.
Yeah, I think Cass's comments are spot on. I would also suggest, and this is just my own experience, the biggest challenge when it comes to other disciplines is the extent to which your understanding of the field is translational. In other words, do they understand the concepts in the same way that you do? When you talk about coding with regard to your data, computer scientists may assume you mean actual programming as opposed to 0 ones. So thinking about that kind of common language in advance, and to the extent that you have identified someone who might work, I would target those who, sort of as Cass has said, seem amenable to discussions or have some of that immediate tie to an interest area or something else. That way it increases the likelihood you get a good connection at the start.
Can I comment on that?
Please.
Yeah, so like my case, joining conference, right? And the different discipline, I think that's a highly recommended. And because you're gonna get to see kind of, the people in the different area. And also I kind of, volunteer to be kind of doing kind of speaker or anything, kind of small law. That's how I get involved with the law enforcement and start doing kind of small training. And then later kind of, getting bigger and bigger. And I think first training, I was thinking like, oh, nobody inviting me. And so I'm a cyber criminologist, like, what should I do? So then I found the local area, the banks, and they were kind of, looking for a cyber crime expert. And so I wasn't sure, like I was a cyber crime expert at that time, but I mean, I volunteer, can I speak out something? And so then you kind of get to know kind of bankers. And so then other people from cybersecurity, so get involved. And that's how I kind of expand my network. So I think whatever you see the opportunity and, seize the opportunity. And that's, my suggestion.
And I see we have a question in the audience. Fawn, yes.
Yes, good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all the presenters for sharing your expertise and thoughts with the group today. I also would like to thank you, Dr. Malcolm, for organizing all these wonderful workshops for us. My question, it's kind of like a follow-up question with regard to the first question. I think that one of the things why a lot of the manuscript submission to traditional criminological journals have to do with the fact that cybercrime has not been, we have not able to establish cybercrime as other subfields such as intimate partner violence, correction, juvenile delinquency. And I think that the creation of the Division of Cybercrime of ASC is a move in the right direction. And my question basically has to do with the success of the field of cybercrime as a whole. I am interested in knowing from each presenter, and because of time constraint, you're welcome to share more than one thing, but if you could only choose one thing or one area that you feel that we need to focus on in order to move the field of criminology forward or help establish the field, or as Tom pointed out, how could we, gain acceptance from the other scholars, and then or also how can we help fit cybercrime into the larger picture of criminology and criminal justice. Thank you.
Hi, Fawn. Great question. A few things around, I guess, that question and just a few comments. I don't necessarily think we should be striving for acceptance per se from everyone else. I think that's probably I don't necessarily think that's the right way to frame it. I think we need to be authentic in the research that we're doing. We need to be doing good, solid research. We need to make sure it's empirically sound, that it's kind of strong academic research. And I think that I would like to hope that the research would then speak for itself. And I think it also kind of goes back to some of the timing issues that I talked about previously. I think, like initially when I submitted that first article and was told online fraud isn't a thing, I think over time people start to realize the extent of the problem. And I think what we need to just keep doing is supporting each other. We need to keep providing opportunities for our colleagues and for ourselves to publish, whether it's this division. There are similar divisions in the Australian Criminology Society, the European Criminology Society. It is gaining traction. It is gaining, I guess, greater acceptance. But I don't think we should necessarily be seeking approval from of other academic colleagues, but we should just be, I guess, satisfied in the work that we're doing and just let the work speak for itself. That's kind of how I'd respond to that.
Just as a follow-on, I agree with the need for the real solid methodology and framework to drive most of the overall work that you're doing, regardless of what it is. Topically, the only thing that immediately comes to mind is the absence of work around the response to cybercrime at the local level. And that seems to be true internationally when you look at most of the work that's out there. There's very little in the US, a little bit in the UK and Australia, but they're qualitative samples, or they're not necessarily evocative of the entire country. And that's an opportunity assuming you can get access to the right populations, to actually do some interesting and informed work that would benefit the broader field. Because that's the immediate tie, right? We're criminal justice and criminology broadly as a field. And so that's a tie-in that should work.
Hi, Fawn. Yeah, thank you for asking. Incredible, great question. And because I've been thinking, like, do we have to be kind of accepted to different discipline? And like, I don't know, I always kind of struggle. So as mentioned, like, you know, so how far I should go, right? And so that was my kind of, you know, immediate kind of struggle. But at the same time, I think, like, as long as if it's a crime goes, like, we have to be, you know, kind of striving. So that's why I kind of, you know, sometimes I'm kind of combat mode, right? And because I was invited to, you know, cyber terrorism groups and so political scientists. I was the only cyber criminologist there, and I couldn't understand why they invited me there, because they were attacking me, right? Because I mentioned cyber crime, right? Cyber terrorism can be kind of, you know, cyber crime area. They were very upset about it. So how dare you saying this, right? And you know, that type of feedback I received. And if I kind of present something in the computer science, they say like, do you really understand, like, you know, coding works? And so it's a kind of battle. It is battle, but at the same time, I believe if it's as long as a cyber crime realm, doesn't matter. Like interpersonal, technical, I think we should kind of, you know, work on this. And also, I think we have a very strong niche, and that's criminology. So I tend to use criminological theory. That's like all the time. Doesn't matter like what types of research I do within cybersecurity and like, you know, other crime. So that actually kind of brings kind of new insight to the different disciplines. So then they are likely accept kind of our idea. So that's why I love to kind of work with, collaborate with the kind of, you know, different experts, so that, of course, like theoretical frame we kind of provide at the same time. So still the other field can kind of feel their side of it, right? And the comfort zone we create. So it is extremely difficult, but I mean, I think that's what we should work on. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I echo with everyone else who said before me. But from my perspective, I think what I found helpful was that getting feedback from other non-cyber CJ colleagues was very helpful. We don't necessarily want to create a new field, but we want to be accepted as it is, and as we grow in terms of our publication, our research, and other types of crime has soared, and people got realized this is an important issue. So I think we might need to wait a little bit more, time. We might need to have a little bit more time, like Cassandra said. The timing would be also quite helpful in some sense.
Thank you very much.
Well, it is, I think this worked out perfectly. It's 10 o'clock, so we're at the hour, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of our presenters. The DC appreciates you and your work and just all the amazing things that you're doing. And thank you so much to everyone who attended. Please feel free to contact our presenters with any other questions that you have, and I'm happy, of course, to email the recording to you. We hope everyone has a wonderful summer, and we're looking forward to the White Hat Conference coming up in June, as well as some other events the DC is sponsoring coming up this fall. So we'll keep you posted. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.